At the city's most exclusive mansion party, the billionaire's cruel girlfriend pointed at me and demanded I dance for everyone's entertainment. What she didn't know was that her own boyfriend would end up dancing with me, and that this moment would destroy her world forever. Before we dive into this incredible story of jealousy, betrayal, and the most romantic plot twist ever, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell. You're about to witness the ultimate revenge story. Now let me tell you what happened at that unforgettable party. My name is Maureen, and I never thought that working as a server at one party would completely change my life. It was a Friday evening in October, and I had been hired to work at what everyone was calling the social event of the year. The host was Benjamin Cross, a 32-year-old billionaire who had made his fortune in tech investments and real estate. His mansion in the hills overlooked the entire city, and tonight it was filled with the wealthiest and most powerful people you could imagine. I had been working part-time as a server for an upscale catering company while finishing my journalism degree. What nobody at that party knew was that I was actually working on an undercover story about how service workers are treated by the wealthy elite. I had been documenting instances of rudeness, entitlement, and downright cruelty for months. Tonight was supposed to be my final research gathering before writing the article that would expose this ugly truth. The party was already in full swing when I arrived. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over marble floors, and guests in designer clothing moved through rooms that looked like they belonged in a palace. I was dressed in the standard server uniform, a simple black dress and white apron, and I immediately got to work serving champagne and hors d'oeuvres to the glamorous crowd. That's when I first saw her. Cassandra Whitmore swept into the main ballroom like she owned the place, which, in a way, she did. As Benjamin Cross's girlfriend of 2 years, she had become accustomed to being treated like royalty wherever she went. She was stunning, I'll give her that. Tall, blonde, wearing a designer purple gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. But there was something cold in her perfectly made-up eyes, something cruel in the way her glossy lips curved into what looked like a smile, but felt more like a threat. Following behind her were her 3 best friends, her loyal squad who hung on her every word. There was Brittany, a redhead with sharp cheekbones and an even sharper tongue. Madison, brunette and petite, but with an attitude that made her seem much larger. And Sophia, the quiet one who rarely spoke, but whose silence somehow felt the most menacing of all. Together, they moved through the party like a pack of wolves, beautiful and dangerous. I tried to stay out of their way at first, but that became impossible when Cassandra decided I was her target for the evening. It started small. She would deliberately move her glass just as I reached for it, making me stretch awkwardly. She would ask for specific drinks that I knew weren't available, then act annoyed when I had to explain we didn't have them. Her friends found this hilarious, giggling behind their hands like we were all still in high school. But Cassandra was just getting started. As the evening progressed, her behavior became increasingly outrageous. She knocked over a glass of red wine and pointed at me, saying loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "Clean that up immediately, and be careful not to stain my dress while you're down there." I knelt to clean up the mess while she stood over me, making comments about how some people were just born to serve others. Her friends egged her on, making their own snide remarks about my appearance, my obvious lack of expensive jewelry, and how I probably couldn't even afford to shop at the stores where they bought their accessories. I bit my tongue and continued working, secretly taking mental notes for my article. This was exactly the kind of behavior I was documenting, but experiencing it firsthand was more humiliating than I had expected. Throughout all of this, I kept noticing Benjamin Cross watching from across the room. He was exactly what you'd expect from a billionaire. Tall, dark-haired, impeccably dressed in a custom-tailored black tuxedo. But there was something different about his expression. While his girlfriend tormented me, he wasn't laughing or looking away in embarrassment. Instead, he seemed to be studying the situation intently, his dark eyes moving between Cassandra and me with an unreadable expression. The turning point came about 2 hours into the party. Cassandra had apparently decided that her previous humiliations weren't enough. She grabbed my arm as I was passing with a tray of champagne, causing me to stumble slightly. Several guests turned to look, and I could feel my cheeks burning with embarrassment. "You know what, girls?" Cassandra announced loudly, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "I just had the most wonderful idea. Look at this grand ballroom with its beautiful marble floor. Wouldn't it be entertaining if our little server here gave us a dance performance?" My heart sank. The main ballroom was enormous, with soaring ceilings and a polished floor that was indeed perfect for dancing. But it was also the center of the party, visible from every angle, where everyone would be able to see whatever was about to happen to me. Brittany clapped her hands together. "Oh, that's perfect! I bet she's never even been to a real dance class." Madison laughed. "This should be hilarious. I'm definitely recording this." Sophia just smirked, which somehow felt worse than if she had said something cruel. More guests were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. I could see curious faces turning our way, wealthy socialites and business moguls all waiting to see what would happen next. My hands were shaking as I held my serving tray. "I'm sorry, but I'm working right now," I said as politely as I could manage. "I need to continue serving the guests." Cassandra's laugh was like breaking glass. "Oh, but darling, we are the guests, and this is what we want to be served." Entertainment. She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a handful of cash. "I'll even tip you. Say $500 if you can manage not to completely embarrass yourself." The crowd was growing larger. I could hear whispers and see people pulling out their phones. My face was burning with humiliation, but I also felt a spark of something else. Anger. This woman thought she could buy my dignity for $500. She thought I was nothing more than her personal entertainment, a toy to play with for the amusement of her wealthy friends. But what Cassandra didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been dancing since I was 3 years old. Ballet, jazz, contemporary, hip-hop, ballroom, I had studied it all. I had even taught dance classes to pay for college before I got into journalism. Dance had been my first love, my escape, my passion before life led me in other directions. I looked around the circle of expectant faces, at Cassandra's cruel smile, at her friends with their phones ready to record my humiliation, and I made a decision that would change everything. $500? I asked, setting down my tray carefully on a nearby table. "You know what? Sure. I'll dance for you." Cassandra's smile widened triumphantly. She thought she had won. Her friends were barely containing their laughter, already anticipating the show they were about to witness. Even some of the other guests looked uncomfortable, like they wanted to intervene, but didn't want to cause a scene at Benjamin's party. I walked slowly to the center of the ballroom, my heart pounding, but my mind becoming strangely calm. The crowd formed a loose circle around me, and I could feel dozens of eyes watching my every move. Cassandra stood at the front with her friends, her arms crossed and her expression expectant. "Well?" she called out. "We're waiting." I closed my eyes for a moment, listening to the soft classical music that had been playing in the background all evening. Then I began to move. At first, I kept it simple, basic steps that might indeed look amateurish to someone who didn't know dance. I wanted them to think they were getting exactly what they had paid for, exactly what they expected. I could hear a few snickers from Cassandra's direction, and I saw some guests looking away in second-hand embarrassment. But then, slowly, I began to let my real skills show. My movements became more fluid, more controlled. I incorporated turns and extensions that showed years of training. The snickering stopped, the whispers died away. The entire ballroom fell silent except for the music. I could feel the crowd's energy shifting from cruel anticipation to genuine amazement. But I wasn't done yet. As the classical piece transitioned into something with a stronger beat, I let myself truly dance. Not just the technical perfection I had learned in studios, but the passionate expression that had always been my gift. I moved across that marble floor like it was my stage, like I was born to be there. Every extension was perfect, every turn was precise, every movement told a story of grace and strength and beauty. I was no longer the humiliated server, I was an artist, and this was my art. The transformation in the room was electric. Guests who had been talking or looking at their phones were now completely focused on my performance. I could see jaws dropping, eyes widening, and most satisfying of all, I could see Cassandra's smug expression melting into shock and something that looked very much like fear. But the biggest shock was yet to come. As I spun through a particularly challenging sequence, I suddenly became aware of someone else moving toward the dance floor. Benjamin Cross was walking toward me, his eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. He stepped onto the marble floor and extended his hand to me, a question in his eyes. I had a split second to decide: continue dancing alone or accept his invitation and see what happened. I took his hand. What happened next was pure magic. Benjamin, it turned out, was not just a brilliant businessman, he was also an accomplished dancer. He led me into a waltz that was so natural, so perfect, that it felt like we had been dancing together for years. Our movements complemented each other flawlessly, creating something beautiful and romantic that had the entire ballroom mesmerized. I could see the crowd watching us with wonder and delight, but more importantly, I could see Cassandra. Her face had gone from shock to absolute horror as she watched her boyfriend dancing with me, the server she had tried to humiliate, with obvious chemistry and genuine enjoyment. Her mouth was hanging open. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the rage and jealousy burning in her eyes. "This isn't happening," I heard Brittany whisper, her voice shrill with disbelief. Madison's phone was still recording, but now she was capturing something entirely different from what she had expected. "Cassandra, are you seeing this?" Sophia, for once, had something to say. "We need to stop this. Now." But Cassandra was already moving. She stormed onto the dance floor, her purple gown billowing behind her like a storm cloud. "Benjamin!" she shrieked. "What do you think you're doing?" Benjamin and I slowed our movements but didn't immediately separate. He looked at his girlfriend with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment, maybe, or disgust. "I'm dancing, Cassandra. You should try it sometime. It's quite enjoyable when done with someone who has actual talent." The insult hit its mark. Cassandra's face flushed red beneath her foundation. "With the help? Are you insane? Get away from her right now!" The ballroom had gone completely silent. Every conversation had stopped. Every guest was watching this drama unfold like it was a movie. I started to step away. This was getting too intense, and I didn't want to cause more problems, but Benjamin's hand tightened gently on mine. "Actually, Cassandra," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the silent room, "I think it's time we had a conversation. A very public one." My heart was racing. Whatever was about to happen, I could tell it was going to be big. Benjamin turned to face the crowd, still holding my hand, and began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, I owe you all an apology. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, but instead, you've had to witness behavior that I find absolutely unacceptable." Cassandra's eyes went wide. "Benjamin, what are you doing?" He ignored her. "For the past several hours, I've been watching someone I thought I knew treat another human being with cruelty and disrespect. I've been testing whether this behavior was an aberration or a pattern." He looked directly at Cassandra. "It's clearly a pattern." The crowd was hanging on every word. I could see phones coming out again, but this time to record Benjamin's speech rather than my humiliation. "This young woman," he continued, gesturing to me, "has shown more grace, dignity, and talent in one evening than some people show in a lifetime, while someone else has shown their true colors in the worst possible way." Cassandra was starting to panic. "You don't understand. She's nobody. She's just a server." "She's a human being," Benjamin said firmly, "and you've treated her like garbage. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are." I watched as Cassandra's world began to crumble around her. Her friends, who had been so eager to join in her cruelty earlier, were now backing away from her, clearly wanting to distance themselves from the fallout. "You can't be serious," Brittany said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Oh, I'm very serious," Benjamin replied. "In fact, I'm so serious that I think it's time for some people to leave my party. Permanently." The power in his voice was unmistakable. This wasn't just a boyfriend having a fight with his girlfriend, this was a billionaire making a decision that would have consequences far beyond this one evening. But I had my own revelation to share. This seemed like the perfect moment to reveal my true identity and purpose. "Actually," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the silent ballroom, "there's something you all should know. I'm not just a server, I'm an investigative journalist, and I've been working undercover for the past 6 months, documenting exactly this kind of behavior for a story I'm writing." The silence in the room became even more profound, if that was possible. I could see the color draining from several faces, not just Cassandra's, but others who were probably remembering their own behavior toward service staff over the past months. "I have notes, recordings, and witness accounts of how the wealthy elite treat people they consider beneath them," I continued. "Tonight was supposed to be my final research gathering, and you've all provided me with more material than I could have hoped for." Cassandra let out a sound that was half gasp, half shriek. "You set me up!" "This whole thing was a setup." "Actually, no," Benjamin said, and his voice was warm when he spoke to me but ice cold when he turned back to her. "I had no idea about Maureen's real identity. But you know what? It makes me respect her even more. She's been subjected to months of cruelty and humiliation, all for the sake of exposing an important truth." He squeezed my hand and looked at me with genuine admiration. "That takes courage and integrity, 2 qualities that seem to be in short supply around here." The crowd was starting to murmur now, the shock beginning to wear off and conversations starting up in small groups. I could see people looking at Cassandra and her friends with new eyes, remembering their own observations of the evening's events. Cassandra made one last, desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Benjamin, please. You can't throw away 2 years for this. This nobody—" But Benjamin had clearly made up his mind. "2 years of what, Cassandra? 2 years of watching you treat people badly and pretending I didn't notice? 2 years of making excuses for behavior that I should have called out from the beginning?" He shook his head. "I'm not throwing away anything valuable." That was the final blow. Cassandra's face crumpled, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the past several hours of deliberate cruelty, and my sympathy evaporated. "This isn't over," she said, but her voice was weak and defeated. "Yes, it is," Benjamin replied simply. "Security will escort you and your friends out. Don't contact me again." And just like that, it was over. Cassandra and her squad were led away by security guards who appeared as if by magic. The crowd began to disperse, talking excitedly about what they had just witnessed. Several people approached me to congratulate me on my dancing and to express their disgust at how I had been treated. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Benjamin asked me to join him in his private study, away from the crowd and the chaos of the party. As we walked through the elegant hallways of his mansion, I couldn't help but feel like I was in a dream. "I owe you an apology," he said, once we were alone. "I should have intervened sooner. I should never have let her treat you that way." "You were testing her," I said. "I understand why you needed to see her true character." He nodded. "I've been having doubts about Cassandra for months." Tonight confirmed everything I was afraid of. He paused, then looked at me with those intense dark eyes. "But more than that, tonight showed me something amazing. Your grace under pressure, your talent, your courage in pursuing this story, I'm incredibly impressed." My heart was beating fast again, but for entirely different reasons now. "I have a proposition for you," Benjamin continued. "I know you're finishing your journalism degree and your undercover story sounds important. What if I told you I could help you take it even further? I have connections in media, resources that could help you reach a much larger audience." I stared at him in amazement. "You would do that?" "I would do that for someone who's willing to fight for justice the way you are," he said. "But I'm hoping we could work together on more than just this one story. I've been looking for someone with your integrity to help me with a new philanthropic foundation I'm starting. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle, who won't let power go to their head." The offer was beyond anything I had imagined when I walked into this party. But there was something else in Benjamin's eyes, something that made me think this partnership might involve more than just business. "And," he said, stepping a little closer, "I was hoping you might let me take you to dinner sometime. Somewhere we can dance again, but this time without the audience." I looked at this incredible man who had just turned his entire life upside down in defense of my dignity, who was offering me opportunities I had only dreamed of, and who was looking at me like I was the most fascinating person he had ever met. "I think I'd like that," I said. As I left the mansion that night, I couldn't help but smile at the incredible turn my life had taken. I had gone from being humiliated and treated like nothing to being offered a business partnership, a story that would make my career, and the possibility of romance with one of the most eligible bachelors in the city. But the best part was knowing that Cassandra and her friends had been exposed for who they really were. Their cruelty had backfired in the most spectacular way possible, and justice had been served in front of everyone who mattered in their social circle. My article, when it was finally published 3 months later, became a sensation. It sparked conversations about class, privilege, and basic human decency that lasted for years. And Benjamin was true to his word. His resources and connections helped me reach an audience I never could have accessed on my own. As for our dinner date, well, that led to many more dates, and eventually to a partnership that was both professional and deeply personal. It turned out that a billionaire who valued integrity and kindness was exactly the kind of person I wanted to build a life with. Sometimes I think about that night and marvel at how completely everything changed in just a few hours. One cruel woman's attempt to humiliate me ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. It just goes to show that you never know who you're really dealing with, and that treating people with cruelty and disrespect will eventually come back to bite you. The lesson is simple: be kind to everyone you meet, because you never know whose life you might be changing, including your own. Can you believe those twists? From dance challenge to dancing with the billionaire himself? Can you imagine Cassandra's face when Benjamin chose me over her? What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments. If you're obsessed with these karma stories like I am, smash that like button and subscribe for more amazing tales of justice and unexpected romance. Ring that notification bell because you won't want to miss our next story of karma and sweet, sweet justice.